Welcome to our posts. Today, we will see stories of r/malicious compliance. My manager promised his manager that we could get our work done 2 weeks before the agreed timeline, so I made him work on Saturday with me. Almost 10 years ago, I worked at a company where my department analyzed survey and secondary data, compiling it into handbooks each quarter. After 6 months of joining the department, my manager, who joined us 2 months after me, reorganized our tasks in an attempt to improve our efficiency. This manager was promoted internally and was notorious for kissing up to management. He was technically not qualified for the promotion due to a different background required for our department, but one of the C-suite members liked him a lot. He did have some expertise in other areas, but generally had an unpleasant personality, so many people in the company didn't like him much. Along with 3 new projects, I was assigned the handbook task for the first time. The meeting was in February, so my first handbook would be for that year's quarter 1. In the meeting, I also asked my colleague who had managed the project for 4 years to explain the usual timeline. She said it took 6 months, a time frame agreed upon by management for years. Considering the person handling it would also have other important projects. This means, for quarter 1 data, the printed copies of the handbook need to be ready by 30th of September. The 6-month period includes collecting the analysis from survey managers, and for secondary data, I would have to contact the data owner and do the analysis myself. I also have to work closely with the outsourced company that does the design and printing. I carried out the handbook project smoothly along with my other tasks, and by late July, the only thing left for me to do was to proofread the content. The next procedure required me, my manager, and the designer to review and finalize every page before sending it to the unit head for approval. Printing and delivery take about 2-3 weeks, so we aim to submit the design by mid-August and confirm the final version for printing by the last week of August. However, on the last Friday of July, a whole 2 weeks before our target timeline to send the design to the unit head, this conversation happened. Manager, I need you to finalize everything today because we are sending the design to the unit head on Monday. Me, next Monday? Why? We have 2 weeks. Manager, well, the unit head wants to see some changes around here, so I thought we could speed up the publication of this handbook to start. I told the unit head we would send the design to her on Monday. Me, okay. You could have discussed this with me first. I mean, the proofreading is almost done. I can get it done by today, but we still need to sit down with the designer to finalize and sign off. The appointment is in a week. Manager, can you do it tomorrow? Go ask the designer. Now, it was not normal in our company to come to the office and work on weekend. And of course I already had a plan for that weekend, so this was really annoying to me. At least I knew that the designer would have no issue moving it to the next day, because he is very cooperative. Me, I can try. But tomorrow is Saturday. I'm not sure if he can make it. And are you sure we want to rush this? Because even if we meet the designer tomorrow, the hard copy will be delivered just 2 weeks earlier than the normal deadline. Is it that significant? Manager, yes, just go ask the designer now. So, I called the designer, and as expected, he had no problem meeting on Saturday. Me, Mr. Manager, the designer is okay to meet tomorrow. Is 10 a.m. okay with you? Manager, huh? Puzzled look. Me, you also need to be there for the sign-off. Manager, I do. Me, yes, you literally need to sign off on the final version to send to the unit head. It's the normal procedure. TBH, he didn't need to be there aside from following procedure. He had already seen the design a few times and likely wouldn't have contributed much to the meeting. I would have loved for him not to be there anyway. But at that point, I was quite excited to make him come to the office on the weekend, when he obviously didn't realize he also had to be there with the designer. Manager, I can't tomorrow, I'm going somewhere until Sunday. Me, well, if you want to send this to the unit head on Monday, then you have to be here tomorrow. Manager, sigh. Let me get back to you. About half an hour later, he came up to me with the sourest face ever. 10 a.m. tomorrow is fine, and walked away. I'm guessing he must have pissed off someone when he had to cancel his weekend plan. So the next day, he came in 1 hour late, not smiling at all, and was rude to the designer and me. He was really unhappy to be in the office on that day, but we got it done by 1 p.m. The following week, the story of how I made my manager come to work on Saturday was told around the company. Apparently, the plan that he had for the weekend was a group trip with some of his buddies who also worked in the company, and he had to make new arrangements to get to the place by himself and arrived late. A lot of people thought it was really funny, including the unit head and some of his buddies, and laughed at the image of him walking into the office on Saturday for some trivial yet necessary work. Nevertheless, the next 2 years that I worked on the handbook, he never promised anyone to have the handbook ready before the 6-month timeline. Next story. How my friend got paid to find creative ways to sleep for 19 months. I posted this as a comment in another sub, and someone DM'd me, said y'all would like to hear the story. I hope it fits here. TL Doctor at the bottom. I have a very good friend who maliciously complied her way into getting paid for essentially doing absolutely nothing for 19 months. It was a government job, no surprise there. She and her colleague worked in a state office that kept track of plague cases among prairie dog towns. They were super busy trapping and testing all summer, but once winter comes, prairie dogs hibernate, so they ran out of work. They told their boss via email there was no more to do for the season that first autumn, and their boss responded by telling them to stand by for reassignment. So, they did. For months. They didn't want to be accused of theft by just clocking in and out and leaving so in the very beginning. They organized some storage spaces very slowly, cleaned their office several times, organized paperwork, and that sort of thing. When they ran out of crap to do, they started sleeping, doing schoolwork, Sudoku, what have you. Initially, they slept in turns so someone was always available if anyone came to check in on them, but when it became obvious no one was coming, they stopped bothering. By summer the following year, when the prairie dogs came out of hibernation and she thought her work might resume, the whole office, all the employees, in every department received an email from someone high up informing everyone that particular department had been cut. Don't know if it was unfunded, or they got all the data necessary the previous summer, or that particular pet project of some politician was forgotten about. But somewhere along the line, the state fish and game axed the project for whatever reason. Nothing was mentioned in the email about her job status, so her and her coworker continued to go in and do nothing. She'd tell me about making a giant binder rubber band chain and roping 2 office chairs together facing each other to sleep in the seats. She's only 5 ft tall, so she fit relatively well. Making a nest under her desk and moving the large-ish copy machine out of its cabinet and sleeping inside. They made sure the security people saw them periodically throughout the day, and they were on camera. Anyone above them paying attention would have noticed, but no one ever took the time. They dodged folks in the other departments for fear they'd get told on and just minded their own business. They rarely had much interaction with other employees anyway. Eventually, she ran into her boss at a show and she asked my friend where she had found new work. My friend didn't lie and said she still worked there. Where you left them. She said you should have seen her face when the lady put the pieces together and realized what was going on. The jig was up, and she and her colleague were let go that following morning via email before they went in. Because they had technically worked there for so long, I think 2 years was the threshold, they both got a little severance package. In case you're wondering, they got to keep their pay since 1. They had proof they informed their boss they had no work, and she clearly saw the email and responded. 2. They still showed up. 3. They did exactly what they were told. And 4. It wasn't their job to make sure they actually had work to do. They both qualified for unemployment to boot. Neither of them used the unemployment since they had both been feeling like the gravy train was sure to derail any day, so they had new jobs lined up. TLDR, my friend's job became obsolete. When she informed her boss she and her colleague had no more work to do, she was told to stand by for reassignment. My friend stood by for 19 months and got paid to do nothing until she ran into her boss at a show and her boss finally figured out what was happening. My friend and her coworker were quietly let go with a little severance package. Edited to add, "Thank you all for your stories. I had no idea it was so common to misplace employees that continue to get paid. Y'all are opening my eyes. Keep 'em coming." The quote from Independence Day comes to mind as I read your comments. You didn't think they actually spent $10,000 for a hammer, $30,000 for a toilet seat, did you? It's not Area 51 all that money is going to. It's forgotten and redundant government employees. Edit strikes back. I got my friend's permission to tell her story, of course, and she asked me to include some more things they did with their time while standing by. She doesn't read it. One autumn, he and her colleague decorated the shared nap hiding spot a walk-in storage closet with miniature Halloween decorations and then reenacted scenes from Hocus Pocus. She spent a whole lot of time editing Wikipedia for grammar. She learned to knit. Then she learned she doesn't like knitting. Her colleague downloaded plans from the internet on how to make a personal flying device think jetpack and tried to make it with office supplies at 1/116th scale. They knew it wouldn't fly. They just wanted to see if they could build what it would look like. During Christmas, they wrote all new jingles about how bored they were. There were 14 completed songs in total, and they recorded them on a little mini tape recorder she still has. Her colleague went to night school, evening school, really, and did his homework during the day. By the time they were finally let go, he was just shy of becoming a paralegal. He did finish school and went pretty much straight into a job, and all these years later, he's now a real estate attorney. Good for him. We invented Uber and Lyft. That is, they worked out a solid plan for a non-taxi ride service that would work based on ordering a car via the internet. This was before smartphones. She wrote a bunch of serial killers in prison and told them how disappointed she was in them. She never received a reply. Thanks again for sharing your stories. Y'all are outstanding humans and you have a fantastic day. Edit, The New Black. A few people DM'd me and asked what she does now. She got a glowing reference from the state job and went on to work at our city zoo and then got her certification in wildlife rehab. She now works as a public outreach coordinator for a big cat sanctuary. No, she does not miss her old job of either juggling plague-ridden prairie dogs or being bored out of her mind. She says, "Thanks for asking." Next story. Manager threatens to write me up with salary deduction if I won't give a doctor's note for asking my excess hours just because I am sick. So I-30F has been working with this company for 3 years already. I work on retail and our managers are always micromanaging and will write us up each time, even just by breathing. But you can tell that's how they are up our nose all the time. Especially I was once written up for eating during my lunch break in our shop. That's for another story. Now on to the original story. My day offs are scheduled every Thursdays, and I was already feeling ill days before my day off. I had waited until my day off to rest and hope I could feel better, but when the end of my day off comes, I still feel sick, so I informed my boss if I can use my excess hours and not come to work the next day since I am so sick. Just for context, our company never pays for our overtime, but expects us to work 12 hours of every day. And per day they will give us 2 hours excess, and since I never requested until that particular day, I had racked up 120 excess hours overtime, which can be used for day offs, etc. I had only requested a 1-day extra off, which would amount to 10 hours to be deducted from my long extra hours accumulated, but my boss threatens to write me up if I don't provide a doctor's note, and she informed me that even if I will provide one, she won't deduct it to my hours. So I comply and went to doctor and take a medical note and was given a 3-day recommended rest and sent it to my manager. Now she has no choice but to let me have additional 3 more days paid sick leave, and I won't be back to shop until Monday instead of just giving me a day to rest. Now Saturday comes and the shop has a lot of issues without me, and my reliever is having hard time coping from work, so my manager calls me and I didn't respond to any of her messages nor calls and just rested well. Monday came and I reported the company to labor claims, and the company was forced to pay me that 120 hours overtime. Next story. Piercings not allowed. I 35 am used to work at a hardware store that rhymes with blows. About 10 years ago, I was a sales associate out on the floor. One day I decided to get my industrials pierced because as I knew the policy, I noticed the front end and a few managers had piercings that did not fit in the policy, so thought it was a bit lax. After I got the piercings, I got wrote up for not following policy. So I researched the policy and purchased a blows beanie so I could meet all dress codes while covering them up. I still got wrote up and I started disputing with HR about it because they were covered and I was following policy even though they were ignoring policy on the front end and allowing them to have face piercings. After a few weeks of fighting it, ended up going to HR outside of the store. District HR calls me in for a meeting with a few store managers and the local HR. HR and managers inform me that even though they are covered, blows still has a no piercings above a certain amount, location, and size policy, even though they can't see them, and I need to get rid of them because they say it's a safety hazard. In comes my compliance questions. I ask how they know I'm wearing and breaking policy if they cannot see them. They say they have the right to ask me to take off beanie if they think I have them in, and that they notice them in my ears when I'm walking into my shift. I repeat with a slightly different question. So does that mean you're going to make me whip my DCK out every shift to make sure I don't have my penis piercing in? Are you going to make everyone take off shirts to verify no one is wearing nipple piercings? HR started backtracking real fast. I actually don't have a penis piercings or nipple piercings, but they didn't know that. After questioning the policy and arguing they couldn't enforce what they couldn't see without sexually harassing people to fit their policy. HR ended up dropping all write-ups, and 2 weeks later blows changed the piercing policy to allow more piercing options and dyed hair. I like to think I helped with that policy change. Checkmate. I hope you guys like this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share, and subscribe the channel our posts.